All right, I'd like to introduce our next presentation here at the Planet MicroCap Showcase Vancouver. It is Cameron Groom from Microbix Biosystems, and he's doing a fireside Q&A with Harold Leishman from Canaccord Genuity. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby. All right, Cameron. So I've been following this company now for, I think actually the previous CEO was when I first got introduced to the company, going way back when, and have helped finance it in the past. I don't currently own shares, but I am eagerly following it. Microbix has been a company in transformation. When we first met, I guess it was 5 or 6 years ago when you took over as CEO, Microbix was a supplier of regulated test ingredients, and you've since transformed the company. You're now a producer of fully regulated medical device consumables, specifically for infectious disease diagnostic tests. Can you briefly explain what this sort of means, how you help these large companies solve their problems?
Absolutely. Microbix was started over 30 years ago by a virologist in the Toronto area, and the company began by helping public health labs do the culturing of different bacterial and viral organisms circulating in the community to check whether these were the same in Peterborough as in Point Pelee. And as they were very good at it, they began to be asked by major diagnostics companies around the world, could you grow, purify, and inactivate some of these organisms we need as biological ingredients in medical tests? And the company continued in that sort of anonymous ingredients business for many years, always generated cash flow from that, but never moved beyond it. And what we've done in the past 6 years is really take the company from that maker of critical materials into a finished goods, finished products, branded, innovative, and proprietary medical devices manufacturers. So now we're making products in other categories beyond just ingredients, in sample collection devices, and also in quality management support. So what we call quality assessment products or test controls. These are mimics of positive or negative patient samples, so you can actually check whether the tests are working. And that can be regulators and accreditation organizations wanting to see if labs actually know what they're doing in their testing for infectious diseases. It can be for the labs themselves, for their quality management systems to, for example, bookend a day's test runs to see that the machinery and the technicians and everyone has worked properly through the day. And it can even be included in the kits of test cartridges, whereby every 20 to 25 cartridges, a control is used to verify that an operator knows what they're doing, that an instrument hasn't gone out of calibration, or that reagents haven't spoiled. And in doing this, we are supporting all sorts of major diagnostics companies, companies that you've heard of, such as Abbott, Becton Dickinson, Cepheid, Quidel Ortho, Roche. These are the sorts of companies that are either buying Microbix products or recommending them to their users. And this enables us to grow very strategically by helping the major companies in our industry do their jobs better and relieving them of some highly technical burdens that they would otherwise have without having to compete with them, but rather make them our collaborators or our customers.
I think at one point you told me what the price differential was when you were just selling this product as an ingredient, and when you put it in a test kit, you're using sort of, if it was dollars per gram, you're now, 1/10,000th of a gram and for twice the price. Is that what?
Well, it's very interesting economics. You're quite right. I mean, the economics of some of what we do in the ingredients business is stunning, but the volume demand can be limited. So if we're creating a gram of purified virus, so a fifth of a teaspoon, that gram might sell for $500,000 US. and go into tens to hundreds of thousands of medical diagnostic tests. Now, when we're selling that as a control, we might dilute that same gram by 10 million times and be selling it at multiples of that. So often, for example, people will see the controls we do on the flocked swabs that were very widely used during COVID for COVID tests, and we format a number of controls onto those flocked swabs. We might pay under 20 cents for a swab, but turn it into a molecular signal test control. So, for example, it might be flu A, flu B, COVID, and RSV on one swab to control a 4-plex respiratory test. That might sell between $20 and $50 when the materials going into that are certainly well under $1 in terms of the biology and the materials. So very good margins for us, and it's about driving volumes for us. Right now, we're doing about $5 million a quarter in ongoing revenues, and we're positioning with all these customers to achieve liftoff with new diagnostic technologies that are emerging that will take us to multiples of that, and that drives very strong net margin to our bottom line.
Fantastic. And that kind of leads me to my next question. I think you took over, I was going to say Microbix 5 years ago, and I was corrected in that it's actually 6 years ago.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun. And since then, the company's undergone, massive change. You completed the transition from, bottle roll to bioreactors. I know you've introduced ERP systems and introduced all kinds of new products, from the caps to the DxTM. Can we talk about the end goal, and at what point is there less focus on innovation and more focus on growth, or is there a balance in there that you're sort of aiming for?
I think there is a balance we're aiming for.
You don't want to stop innovating as a technology.
No. Of course not. But our model is profitable growth. So we're not running the company in a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you spend tons of money, you'll get more. No, that's not the way we do things. We're taking a very systematic strategy to drive profitable growth for Microbix, and this is looking and saying, where can we help the trends that are emerging happen? So great example is, for decades, people have talked about moving cervical cancer screening. This is cancer of the cervix in women, that is, and many other areas in both men and women, but that is driven by a family of viruses called human papillomavirus, for example. And you can either look for cancer once it has happened, which is the pap testing that all women are surveilled with, or you can go 5 to 10 years earlier and actually look for the presence of the virus that will cause cancer in 5 to 10 years. And that transition was never able to happen because nobody could create the positive controls to validate the tests for HPV. We've done that and are now enabling that transition. And all of the major companies involved in that transition are recommending the Microbix controls. So we don't have a stake in whether a particular major multinational wins the contract in Ontario, or wins the contract in the Netherlands, or wins the contract in other developed nations, because all of them are recommending our products. So it puts us in a unique position to benefit from some of that growth. And, I joke with people, it doesn't matter whether it's, COVID or chlamydia that's being tested for on a given day. Microbix is involved in that, and we're capturing that growth.
So just sort of touching on your cervical cancer HPV test, if you're the only company producing this sort of predictive test, what's sort of the timeline to market sales? Because that seems like an enormous opportunity.
Well,
it's a company maker on its own.
It's a very large opportunity for us, and there are many of those opportunities. But I'll just clarify one point: we're not making the test; we're making the control that lets you ascertain whether the test is being run properly.
Right.
So the companies that are investing the many hundreds of millions of dollars in launching those tests, and those can be on large central lab platforms that are the size of, a bank of refrigerators, or they can be little benchtop units that are the size of a toaster. We support all of those categories of instruments in those locations with a growing portfolio of controls. So we're supporting, for example, HPV. I've used that as an example. There are 14 variants of that virus that are directly implicated in causing cancer. No one had controls for those variants, or types they're called, until we created them. So, payers for the tests would look and say, well, that's great, that's great Abbott, or that's great Becton Dickinson or Roche or Hologic that you've got these tests. How do we know they really work? And they'd say, well, until we came along.
Right. But still, it's still got to be a massive market.
It's a big market. These are markets of hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, growing to billions of dollars in sales. And we're looking to capture several percentage points of those markets, typically not less than 5%, and typically not more than 10%. It potentially flows our way. But these are big numbers for a company presently doing $5 million in sales a quarter and roughly running at break even right now.
Right. So it sort of leads me to my next question. As a platform for generating recurring revenue, i.e. from repeat orders for test materials to verify the accuracy of the medical devices, as you've noted, what are the obstacles to growth? FDA approval, I'm guessing, is part of that, and these are also presumably barriers to entry. But
they are, and FDA approvals and regulatory matters and rollout and of our customers' products is our gating matter. So, we can't generate sales in support of in supporting a customer's test until that test itself is approved. And great example is the portable molecular PCR test readers that now can check you, for example, not just for COVID, as we saw a few years ago, but for, in some cases, up to 16 different respiratory viruses can be tested, or multiple gastrointestinal pathogens, multiple sexually transmitted infections. All these are categories we're working on. And when the regulators say, okay, that's great, you have this little toaster-sized instrument, you're going to use it in a retirement home, you're going to use it on a cruise ship, you're going to use it at a school, you're going to use it at a mine site or a film production set. How are you ever going to know if it's broken? How are you going to know that it's not working? So what they're saying is, in every box of 20 to 25 test cartridges, you're going to need to include a known positive control, a Microbix control, not necessarily Microbix control, but we're the best in the world at doing this. And thereby, if a company wants to sell 1 million cartridges a month in boxes of 25, well, that's 40,000 controls a month for us, one SKU to one customer. And when we're achieving prices in the order of $20 per control, you can see $800,000 a month potential for one client, one SKU, that the numbers start to add up very quickly. And that's why we've been investing in upgrading our ERP, enterprise resource planning systems, digitizing our quality management system. It's to support higher volume manufacturing of more SKUs to more customers. And frankly, to be credible when we're dealing with major multinationals, to say, we will not let you down, we will scale with you, and we will support the volumes you need. And it's also one of the reasons why we're committed to staying well capitalized and the profitable growth model.
Right. And I think you announced recently either you completed or you're starting your third or expansion of a third facility. Is that?
We're actually finishing the expansion
right.
of a third
I should have known
facility.
before asking
No,
the question.
it's a great question. It's a moving target. We were considering a fourth facility last year at this time, but caught sight of some regulatory delays on the part of one of our customers, so we put the brakes on that. But we're building out another 2,300 square feet of facility 3, for us to support more product development and QC lab spaces. So we have now 3 facilities. One is owned, where we do our hot biology work. 2 are under long-term lease, where we do principally our test controls and our sample collection devices.
And what's your sort of capacity utilization of those existing facilities?
We're certainly right now we're probably at the 50% mark in our ingredients business. We're about $1 million a month there. We could double that. And in our other businesses, we're at under 25% capacity.
So lots of room to grow.
Lots of room to grow before we need to expand the physical footprint. And as we continue to progressively automate, we see that going higher.
You also have a fairly healthy cash balance. You're currently running an NCIB, which I always like when I'm investing in these companies. Any other plans for that cash? Are you looking at acquisitions? And if so, what would you be looking for?
Well, we ended our June quarter with $13.5 million in cash on our balance sheet, and we are generating positive cash flow. So through our normal course issuer bid, we bought back in the last 9 or 10 months, we bought back about $1 million worth of stock, so not meaningfully denting our treasury. And we see that continuing over the next year. We think it's a very good use of our capital when liquidity and valuations have dropped so sharply in the small cap market. I think broadly speaking, in the absence of any tuck-under acquisition execution, we'd like to keep our cash balances above $10 million. Just demonstrating strength to prospective customers that want us to take on manufacturing of critical materials for them and test controls. And we will look judiciously at acquisitions. Our organic growth profile looks fantastic, but that's not to say it can't be supplemented with tuck-under acquisition opportunities in the medical devices space for us and in the test materials space as well. We chose not to undertake anything in 2023 while we were upgrading the ERP and the EQMS. Now that those are done, based on the go-lives we achieved in early August, now we can start in good conscience to look at that and say we can successfully integrate something.
So going forward, organic growth, can you speak to expectations, or is that putting you on the spot too much?
Well, we've taken, our ingredients business had been running about $1 million a month pre-COVID. That took because of its breadth, it took a hit. During COVID, as patients weren't seeing doctors and doctors weren't seeing patients, that dropped by on the order of 40%. And we more than made that up with growth in our sample collection devices, which went from 0 to 5 million, bailing out Ontario during the pandemic. And our test controls business that's expanded from $1 million a year to $5 million a year. Going forward, the ingredients business has shot back to its previous highs, running at about $1 million a month currently, and now resuming its growth. Our test controls business is growing very strongly. We're in the midst of our budget cycle for 2024, but we see some of our customers now, individual customers, breaking into $1 million order batches in the near term and moving forward. So I'd be surprised if we see that business less than doubling in 2024 from 2023. So, we'll be certainly in the 20s in terms of millions of dollars for 2024 and maybe beyond that.
Is that $8 million then from test controls as a ballpark?
For 2024, ballparking, I would say about 12 million for ingredients. Perhaps as much again for test controls, and then we'll see about sample collection devices. Even though there was all the never again will Canada or Ontario rely on imported product for these critical materials, they've gone right back to relying on imported product. But we can compete on price, and if we're given the opportunity to do so.
No jokes about politicians?
No jokes about politicians, however tempting that might be.
And then we're getting towards the end of our time, but even when I first got involved in the name, Kinlytic was on the table, and it was always, hey, if this ever could, come across the line, it's a company maker in and of itself. And it looks like you're the one who finally found a home for it.
Thank you. We have. And just to give our audience some background, Microbix, as improbably as it may seem, owns the rights to an FDA-approved biologic drug that has multi-$100 million market potential. Our challenge has been that we had nowhere to make it. So to do that required investment of tens of millions of dollars, a minimum of 30 million and up to over 100. So rather than pursue a quest to dilute the bejesus out of our investor base, we chose to partner that asset. And we found a portfolio company of one of the largest life science private equity firms in the world, has done their due diligence and said, by God, Microbix is right. And they provided us a small initial upfront fee of $2 million US, $1 million of which is refundable if the FDA repudiates past advice. And if it does not, and we'll know in the next few months, then we will receive another several $1 million of upfront payments, reverse a write-down on that asset we've previously undertaken, and they will turn on the full funding taps to bring back that clotbuster drug to the U.S. market. And we will receive likely on the order of $15 to $25 million a year in future royalties from that product.
Wow. And how long would that potentially take to ramp up, assuming you get through the FDA without?
Assuming we get through the FDA updates this fall satisfactorily, it will be about a 3-year process to bring that drug back onto the U.S. market, and we'll quickly move up to multi-$100 million sales from there.
Well, I think I forget exactly which category it's in, but I know that currently there's one other drug, one sole drug providing that. And so it is
we change a monopoly into a duopoly with a superior product in some ways.
Wow. That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. That will that could certainly affect the share price.
I believe so. And I think we've got about a minute left, so maybe we conclude there and open it for questions. Yes, sir.
A big question that comes up is the reimbursability of it, and sometimes it's a make or break for a microcap company that, you know, they usually have to work hard even with an FDA approval to get reimbursement from. I know it's different in Canada, but I'm just curious, how do you handle that in the States?
Well, we're in a different position from many companies. Many life sciences companies are trying to launch a novel therapy at hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million a year and saying, oh, it's only a few patients. Please let us squeak through on these ridiculous prices. Our diagnostic products, we're talking about tens of dollars per patient. And for the drug in question that we've talked about, the clotbuster drug, for the indication we're looking at it, which is clearing blocked venous catheters, you're talking between $100 and $150 a dose. So these are very modest, rubber meets the road prices that have blindingly clear pharmacoeconomics. So I don't see us being subject to those risks. But thank you. It's a great question.
What's going on with the antigen business? I don't think that you've really covered growth there.
Well, we talked a little bit about our ingredients business. That is antigens, viral and bacterial antigens that drive the chemistry of tests that look for antibodies in your blood. And that business had been hit hard during COVID. It's snapped back dramatically over the past 9 months. It is back to where it was, running at about $1 million a month in revenues for us. So it'll be likely on the order of 50% of our revenues in 2024. And we are seeing some very substantial growth resume from that business. There are many tests in China where our ingredients have been baked into tests awaiting Chinese FDA approval. and they are now back to work. And we're seeing the emergence of demand as these modern medical tests are being rolled out more broadly through Asia, and that will be a big growth driver for our ingredients business. So thank you. Okay. Well, with that, our ticker is MBX, Michael Bob Xerox on Toronto, and we're also listed on the OTCQX. And do reach out to us through Planet MicroCap, Harold, or directly should you have any questions, and we'd love to address them. Thank you.
Cameron, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.